Welcome to ProSpeak. Welcome to ProSpeak. This is one of those things, one of those places that you can find out everything to do with professional speaking. Sometimes the topic is literally, such as how do you do, like write a script? How do you put together a workshop? Sometimes it is facilitation. Sometimes it is technical. And today it is technical. It's all about the technical side. Now, what do I mean by technical? All of us professional speakers, facilitators, hangout hosts, we have social media and websites and different hubs built. So today, I have a very special guest. He is a friend of mine, at least the last time I checked. He's a friend of mine. He's laughing. Very creative, very insightful, very thought-provoking, Chris Beveridge. And to use his words, we're going to go down the rabbit hole. The trouble is, when I get down the rabbit hole, sometimes I can't find my way around. And we're going to be talking about all of the questions. What goes on? What happens when you're working with a creative? How do you work with a creative? But before we start with Chris, let me tell you about next week. Next week, I am so excited. Next week, I am giving a keynote speech. I am reading the information for BCFHPS. Over in Richmond, it's their annual convention. I'm going to be talking about, guess what? Presentation power. And of course, just to make sure that you know what that is, that's my book, Presentation Power. Yes, you see the tags in it. I constantly use it and refer to it. So I'm going to be talking about presentation power, flat out doing a presentation. But next week's show is about how to use your recordings, because Daniel Turner, who is a videographer who's done many of the videos for me, is going to videotape the show, and then we're going to talk about what happens on that side. And as usual, we've got our wonderful Penny Petty with us to bring some sense, levity, and intelligence to it. Good morning, Penny.
Hi. Good morning, everybody.
Yes.
It's afternoon over here.
Oh, yes, that's right. Penny is joining us from Wasaga, Ontario, Wasaga Beach. Well, here today, outside the window in Victoria, I'm in a very tall building in an area called Rockford. It is fog, pure fog. I can't even see the water. Normally, I have a view that goes miles. I can see the U.S. on the other side of the water. Today, it's fog. And that's sometimes how I feel when I get involved with a creative, when I get involved doing a website build or putting it in. I'm in a fog, and I'm trying to reach through. So let me introduce you to Chris Beveridge. Chris, tell us some stuff about yourself and what's your pet peeves, and we'll start the conversation there.
Well, my name is Chris. As you've probably figured out since you're here, my pet peeve is doing hangout interviews on video. I spend a lot of time with my pug. No, the reason I'm in front of people is I've been doing websites forever. I was on the internet the first day it went public to people, free nets before that, and I'm utterly obsessed with design. I've worked with a lot of big companies, a lot of small companies. On my side time, I teach disabled entrepreneurs how to start businesses using the internet and gain independence. I've done covers for a magazine in New York for a year, and I've won a grant from Google for doing app development, and so everything from UI design to magazine design to website design. If you gotta color something, I've had that particular pack of crayons in my backpack at some point.
Okay, first piece of fog. What's a UI?
Oh, user interface, UI and UX. That's user interface and user experience. So the person that's kind of in charge of not just doing the design for, say, an app or a website, but the person that's in charge of how that design flows, how it tells the user, click this button to get to this next screen in the most obvious way.
Oh, okay. That's it. It sometimes feels that I am in the rabbit hole. But if I'm a speaker or I'm a facilitator and I need a website that essentially is a showcase for me and for my work, where the heck do I start? Now, I just have to say to the audience, I've had 5 websites, and Chris is currently building out the balance of our new website, which is something I've not seen before, a tri-site. So here I am, I'm a speaker, I've got a particular topic that I'm excited about, and I go to a web designer and I say, this is what I'm about, and that's when we go down on this side, we go down the rabbit hole. What happens? What really should I be telling you?
Well, first and foremost, I think when it comes to hiring somebody that's creative or hiring someone in that role for your company, a lot of the times we're looking at the wrong things. I mean, we of course look at resume, portfolio. Everybody, the first thing you ask, can I see your portfolio? And then before we sign a check, we checked out their unupdated profile on LinkedIn, right? It's the usual workflow of things. But the problem is your creative person, the person that's going to be dealing with your brand, I mean, the personal level, I think, is really overlooked a lot of the time. The creative process, what that person's process is, how you prefer to be contacted and worked with. I mean, any contract I've ever had that's ever gone south, or any of the times I've ever, fallen flat on my face in something, it's never been a matter of the work involved, the client involved, my talent or anything. It's always been a part of the communication process. So I think we really overlook and make too many assumptions on both sides, both the client side and the creative side, as to what we're looking for in our communications, and that sort of a thing, and what we're looking for in the personal view. I mean, when we have a large company, we all understand company culture. You don't just hire somebody for their skill set. You also see that they'll fit within the company culture of your already existing business. And we have to remember, as small businesses and solopreneurs, the concept is no different. You might only be a one-person operation, but that still forms a company culture, your culture and your way of working. And I think it's important to take a deeper look at how any creative, especially that you're going to be hiring, fits into your company culture with their personality, because their personality is going to come out in every bit of work. I mean, you and 10 different people could give the same instructions to 10 different designers and get 10 completely different looks, because the designer, because it's an artistic form somewhat, their outlook on life, their process is going to color your instructions somewhat. You see what I'm saying? So it's important to see that their voice itself also works within your company culture.
Yeah, I can see the challenge. Are you suggesting then that there should be sort of a meet, greet, get to know, get very clear on the person that you're going to work with, and sort of explore their culture, explore how they do it and why they do it, to see if there's a fit?
Well, yeah, and I mean, this can all be, I think, put into one box, which is the creative's process. How whatever creative you hire works, their process to take things from your idea into a finished product, that's going to be what affects the communication. That's going to be what affects the miscommunication. So instead of just asking to see their finished products and judging a creative person based on their finished products, you're going to want to know what it took to get to those finished products and what their process of working is. I think it's an important part to look at. Don't just look at whether the runner has won a race or not. Look at their form while they're running to see if it matches with your brand.
Okay, I get that. One of the things that comes up for me is the term creative. The working with the creatives, and I love that, because everybody that's a speaker or a facilitator or in some way involved in the field of expression, who's written a book, considers themselves also to be creative, and they have very strong ideas about what they want to do. How do you reconcile, if we want to say the creative ego of the speaker or the presenter with the creative ego of the designer?
Well, there's a number of things. First and foremost, trust. I mean, it sounds like such an easy thing to say, but trust is more important in this sort of a business relationship, I think, than any other I've experienced, because anything creative is going to be dealing with a number of subjective topics, a number of variables. I mean, when you hire yourself an accountant, the numbers work or the numbers don't work. Whereas when you hire a creative person, there's infinite shades of red. See what I'm saying? So I think the first part really is making sure that the person that you've hired you trust, and again, it comes down to having that corporate culture where you think that their aesthetic gets along with your aesthetic. So instead of competing two creative people, it's more so somebody is able to add accents to what you're doing. Secondly, I think a lot of that falls onto the quote-unquote creative side. Jesus, I'm an authentic creative now. I've got two buzzwords. I'm one hashtag away from a trend. But yeah, I mean, it really comes down to it's somewhat the responsibility of the creative, because when you're new in your career, I think in any career, but I can only speak for mine, but when you're new for your career, you want to take everything and you want to make everybody happy. You whatever the job is, and if somebody sends you 16 different changes, you want to make all of those changes for them because you're new. But I've realized as I've gone on in time in my career, we have a distinct responsibility to our clients. I mean, we're being hired because we have a certain way of looking at things, or there's other items that we prioritize in branding. And sometimes it is our job to say no. Sometimes that's the most responsible thing we can do for a client, to say, well, you've hired me because of my background in this, and based on that background and experience, I really don't think we're going to be using red with orange today in the header. A lot of the time, it's funny because being a creative, you're thought of by the world as being the world's 4-year-old child, right? That everybody needs to rein in and calm down the creative. But a lot of the time, you actually end up being the parent in the role, right? Because as a client gets to learn more and more of your abilities and more of the things you can do, you're the one having to have them take a step back, get a little less excited. We can't do it all at once, and there's a huge amount of responsibility that goes to your client to make sure that you're giving them the best value and you're not allowing them to step outside of what's best for them in the creative space, I guess. And third, Jeff, I guess I would say it really does come down to confidence and how long you've really spent researching and working on your own voice. I mean, you're from the same city I am. We're from Victoria. In this city, you can't be unemployed anymore. I mean, if you get fired from everything else, by default, you're a graphic designer and social media consultant.
Oh, God.
Everyone and their dog is, it seems to be. And the funny part is, if I was having a heart attack right now, neither of you would say to me, well, I've got a nephew who does heart stuff. Let me give him a call and we'll get him in here. He's cheap. We would never do that. But for some reason, with our own brand, our business, our face to the world, we constantly have an uncle's nephew's cousin that blah, blah, blah does this stuff. And so I think a lot of times when we're talking about how to deal with the creative, it's a two-part question of not just how to deal with the creative, but how to find an actual creative as opposed to somebody who likes to draw things. And when you do find that, and you find someone that actually takes the time to research their voice and research their look, that's part of the hiring process. I mean, you know this from hiring me. When you hire me, I have a certain look. I have a certain way I do things, and if somebody doesn't like that certain look, I'm not the right guy. There is probably somebody younger and newer that's willing to just photocopy whatever you say and put it on the screen. But I think it's a disservice, actually, because, I mean, you can download Photoshop and with enough YouTube videos, photocopy out your own stuff, if that makes sense.
Well, I think for me, I think one of the challenges is that, your analogy of sort of connecting with the client, getting to know the client, is exactly what we do as speakers when we go out. I've had 3 meetings and 3 different sessions with the group that I'm going to be speaking to next week. We've reviewed my itinerary, sorry, not my itinerary, reviewed my speech structure, what my, and I got to speak with the organizers and ask them final questions. So it's actually 4 steps when I get booked to do a keynote. And not only that, when I get there, because of the nature of it, if I see that the audience is not responding, I need to be able to sort of turn on a dime to find a way to engage them and do it that way. So I understand that part of it. Now, I've had only once in all these websites that I've been involved in, and my first one was, I tried to work it out. It was way back in 1980s, 89, 91, and it was very crude, and it was just 1 page, and it was just basically, and we still printed brochures and sent them out. We didn't do. It wasn't, when we went to do a gig, we had to print a brochure, we had to talk to you. They didn't go to the website to find us. They didn't look, there wasn't the capability of putting up video. So there's so many elements involved in it now that, and it's overwhelming from my I've got friends who do what I do, both as keynote speakers and do a weekly show, and I've heard Blab, Little Letter, Periscope, Twitter. I mean, the number of social sites now has gone from just Facebook. I counted before I came, I was doing a little research this morning as I was just thinking about this. I count that there are 14 different, and I mean, what works? Is it what's hot, what's not, what works, why should I do it, what suits me, where should I go? And so when it affects your career, i.e., as a speaker or as a facilitator, one, if you want, misstep or misunderstanding on your website, suddenly you could lose all your clients, or you could gain so many more clients. It's so scary down that rabbit hole. It's dark and scary, and there's strange figures down there. And I've often gone in your route of sort of saying, well, how do I find who is genuine? They say they're a web designer. The first place that I have any tangible way to look for them is to do a search on their work and look at the websites they've built. But occasionally I found out that the site that is up, when I contact the person that owns the site, oh no, we actually had to bring in somebody to fix their work.
Yeah.
So that's the time when I actually let go a web designer, because the original, but not the finish. It didn't work. So
it's amazing how often you hear that. Actually, when I first got started, I used to have kind of a joke tagline that nobody hires me first, but they always hire me second. It was always the case. But again, I really think it comes down to, in my experience with other clients, in my experience working with you, it really comes down to you cannot be specific enough in your early talks with your creative person as to how many times you want to be contacted, how your conversation flow is going to go in general. I mean, all the way down to literally how many coffees in person you can expect a month. Anything that you leave out is going to be the thing that ends up becoming the problem. I mean, I can't speak to other designers or whichever, but I know a lot of the time somebody has left halfway through a project. 9 times out of 10, it's communication breaking down on one form or another. It's either broken down between the client and them over the expectations, or it's broken down in the beginnings over finding out exactly how much experience this person has. Most times I see designers break down in my own work, it's because they were hired, they were excited, but then they ran into something that they couldn't deal with, they didn't have the knowledge for, they didn't have the experience for, they don't want to mention that to the client, they're terrified because now they've been paid, and I think that having certain earmarks along the way, I mean, right now the standard in the industry when you hire somebody for a website is you give them a deposit up to 50%, around there, and then at the end of the project you give them the other half of the money. The problem with that being is in a typical 30-day scenario, let's say, you give me the money on the first, so for the first to the fourth, I'm super excited about your brand because I just got paid and I'm working now and da-da-da. And then there's that 3 weeks in between where I haven't been paid, I'm nowhere close to being paid, I have no contact with the client. So it's easy, I think, before you get into this as doing it as a career. Like I'm talking about the random person you can hire. It's easy in that middle part to either look for other projects, not worry about it, and then you see that end of the month is coming up when you're supposed to get paid the other half, and for that last week you're like, oh my God, I'm going to get paid, so I'm excited about this again. And the problem with that being for you, the client, is that you've only got me in the first part of the week and the last half of the month when I'm worried about getting paid. And if we're not talking that whole time, I can either A, be malicious and not do the work, or B, get the wrong idea of what you want me to be doing and go in that direction for 30 straight days until our next communication, when you find out, like, oh, I didn't even want it read and now the entire thing is read. So I think it's really important to set up, if it was me these days and I was having to hire somebody that I didn't know, that was just a brand new designer off the bat, I would, if I was going to pay them, say, $1,000 for my website, I'd be paying them $250 a week with goals along the way. Because in the most rudimentary of psychology, that makes every week payday. That makes every week 4 days before I have to show up in front of him again and have my work done. And that also gives you the chance to put things back on track. If you're seeing the designs going the way that you don't want it to go, or whichever, you're only ever 4 days behind schedule, as opposed to just throwing it out there and hoping for the best kind of thing.
I think that's, I would agree with that. I wish early on I knew that one. I never thought of the psychology of it, and I think that it must be part of the personality of creative people that they need tension and really tension to do creative. I know that when I'm writing, I need the deadline, and sometimes it all comes out, 10 minutes before the deadline. I finish it and I post my next thing. So I think is that part of the psychology of creatives, that they need?
I would say it's the early brain space of the creative. I mean, these days, of course, there's, and I want to say this caveat before my personal channels start getting all kinds of hate mail. I'm not saying that creative types are like anything. There's all different kinds, but on the whole, people early in their creative career will bite off way more than they can chew every time. Anybody in any new business is going to take every new business they can in the beginning before they figure out, oh, I should take things I'm good at because it makes me better at everything. And I think for some people the tension, but I think overall, Jeff, it's more, I'm sick to shit of creative people just being creative and that being the excuse for everything. A lot of creative people work their ass off and stay on schedule and balance the books and deal with a lot of stuff, right? So it's just the creative tag is the computer guy tag of 10 years ago, where we just bestowed this upon somebody. We saw that they could install Chrome and went computer guy and started making up all of these different reasons why it was okay they didn't get back to us and okay that they acted a little weird and on and on and on. So first and foremost, it's like anything. You find somebody that takes what they do very seriously, you know. And I don't know, if I hire the first guy I see to go park my Maserati and he takes off on it, I could do 1,000 hangouts on shitty Maserati parkers, or I could do one hangout on maybe I should have spent a little more time, being that it's my brand. I mean, people seem to forget. Imagine, when you hire a creative person, you're essentially a legally blind person hiring the person that's going to dress you for work every day. We don't take it like that. We don't think of it like that. But that's what it is. And so if you just heard from Michael Lozier that he had one time got me to dress him and I was okay, are you going to give me a full-time job dressing you for work without ever knowing what I'm doing with you? No, of course you're not. But we do that with creatives constantly. I think some part of it is that people like to attach themselves to creative because it tends to make them a little more innovative and dangerous by proxy. So we don't put as much time, I think, checking them out and not just seeing, again, the end work. You know, if I do a great picture, you see that great picture and you hire me for that great picture. Well, what if my process is I like to do 4 pounds of meth and take 6 months to do a picture? Well, you like the picture, but you're not going to like the process.
Got it.
Right? Got it. So that's the key thing, is your creative should be just as professional and just as behind as the brand as everybody else on the team is, and no excuses for being flighty. You know, there's lots of people that can do watercolors at home, and that's fine, and that's creative for sure. But if you're going to be asking anybody for their money or their time, there's a responsibility that goes with that. And I think it's time that we quit giving people like me just the creative badge. You know?
Yeah, with it goes that you should be poor, you should be eccentric, slightly nutty, and not have any responsibilities, and you know, living in.
Well, I'm not poor.
Not poor. Living in the zone.
The other I'm working on. Yeah.
Right. Penny, I know you and I have had conversations, Penny, about websites, and they terrify you. Tell us why.
They totally stress me out, and I'm stressed out listening to this. I'm like, oh my God. Because Chris, communication is so important. So I do have a question, because it probably could have saved me a whole lot of like, oh, now I have to revamp. When I first got my website a couple of years ago, I didn't know how my business was going to expand. I didn't know that I was going to be doing my own hangout show and have videos all over my website. I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. And so when I had a web designer do my website, I communicated to him I wanted the basics.
Right.
And I got the basics, which done me well then. But now what do I do? It's like, oh my gosh, do I have to like revamp a whole new website? Or so I guess basically I just call it like a web page. Is there a difference between a website and a web page, for one thing? And so can someone like yourself come in and work with something I already have, or do we have to rebuild a whole new website?
Well, some of that, Penny, is platform specific, right? So depending on how you had your website made. I mean, if you got your website made in just pure HTML code, one page kind of a thing, it's going to be different. It's going to be difficult for somebody to expand on that specifically, say. But in this day and age, especially with things like WordPress and how far it's come and how expandable it is, no, it's actually very simple. I mean, it really depends on, like I said, the platform you're using and how extensible the platform itself is. You know, and I think for me at least, you know, when I teach classes in this, one of the things I mentioned, I mean, I like to do a class in basically, I'm a graphic designer. If I was a jerk, this is how I'd screw you over. I like to do a very like black and white. These are all the tricks I would use if I wanted to hoop somebody on their site, or, you know, was just like a malicious dude like that. And one of the things I do for my sites is the front end of the site is important, of course, but especially these days with how many tutorials there are out there, how much site building software there is out there, how many themes you can download for WordPress. The front of the site is child's play these days. You know, the real skill and experience comes in how you can modify and design the back end for the user, such as yourself. So when you log into your website, it doesn't matter if you have 1,000 videos, you know, and all this other stuff going on. It makes sense to you. Now, if I wanted to keep somebody as my client, if I didn't have the self-confidence to get new jobs or whichever, I would make it very difficult to edit your website. Why? Because you're calling me every single time and paying me $50 every time you need a new logo, right? So one of the initial questions I would certainly ask in hiring anybody to do my website, everyone is going to be able to either A, have experience on doing the front end of the website, or B, fake experience doing the front end of the website. The back end of the website is where there is no cheats and there's no shortcuts. You know, it takes actual experience and study to be able to do and customize the back of a website for somebody. So again, if I was hiring, I'd be asking to see some samples of their dashboards, of the control areas they've actually made for their clients, because that's going to let me know, are they going to let me go so I can update my own site? Or is this somebody that's so nervous about getting the next job, it's going to be completely convoluted, so I have to phone them for every update? Because there are ways to make a site very, very easy. I mean, I work with Jeff. There are ways to make a site very easy. You know,
I don't know if that was a compliment to you or.
Well, here's a quick example, right? On the ProSpeak site, and all of our sites are still in a somewhat flux as we play with the design and so forth. But on the ProSpeak site, you'll notice when you go to it, at the top there's a large header that shows the most recent video, the description of the most recent video, and it animates it all, right? All of that is done with automation. Okay, the site itself is grabbing the video from YouTube, taking a picture of it, stealing the little description from YouTube, writing it into the header, making it animated. If I was nervous about my job or if I lacked a confidence in my job, that wouldn't be set up that way, and Jeff would have to call me every single time to do it, or try to learn to do it himself on top of being a speaker, this, that, the next thing, right? So there is certainly ways to make it easier for a customer, but again, it comes down to picking somebody that's confident enough in their work that they're not grubbing for your phone calls on everything.
Well, I really like what I just heard, because when I started out, like, I was just like, I wanted basic. It was like small. I didn't know where my business was going to lead to. So many times I've heard of other people that their website is like, oh my God, it was overkill. I didn't need all this stuff and I'm never going to use it. Right? So now they've paid a whole lot of money for nothing. They're just not, or they don't even have it anymore. So what I just heard from you is, like, get someone that really knows what they're doing, and they will help you with your needs for this time. When you expand, we can expand. So it's not like you're overkill at the beginning. So that's good news, because for someone like me that's really, really nervous about, oh my gosh, what am I? It's steps. So that's.
Well, and that's an important thing too, right? Is because these days we look at the idea of web designer as this one job, but actually when you break it down, it breaks down into 5 distinct jobs altogether that usually are encompassed in just one person. And someone that can do the graphics and do the colors, that's great, but that's very, very, very different from being able to do the infrastructure, you know, of the site itself. So again, it comes down to your initial talk with whoever it is you're working with to find out. You could see their pictures and, my God, they're Renoir, you know, they're amazing as a painter, but Jeff's an amazing speaker. He's not sitting down to write a website today. So, you know, people can be creative, but it does go in different ways. Now, the person making your pictures should certainly have a unique voice and, you know, a confidence in their vision, but the person making your website should have a very strong understanding of standards and the standards used from one website to the next website and across the web, right? That's something you really want to look for, because it's like you're saying, can somebody pick up my website and go with it? I've done this so many times, and I never run into a problem taking over the website because of how the website was made, per se, or anything else. The problem is you get a coder or somebody that develops sites that has such a unique way of doing it to themselves that it always has to be them that works on it, because it's almost like they're writing it in a completely different language.
Oh.
So they're not using standards of headers and standards of certain things. So you're trying to almost translate between this person you'll never get to meet and current standards, right? So there is certain standards in website design that you're going to want to make sure the next person's able to pick it up, you know, if you ever decide to go that way.
Well, now, you know, what's this when you can buy, you know, I want to phrase it the right way for a second here. Let's say you come up with a name, a .com name, whatever it is, and you register it, and immediately comes up, do you want to turn it into a website? And they offer you a standard website, and bang, it comes up, and then you get to plug in the different bits. I understand those are called themes, but is that sort of like Lego building a website?
Well, kind of. I mean, that's why there's so many web designers these days, right? Because the number one software really these days used to power websites is called WordPress. And WordPress does have the ability to just download free themes, turn on that theme, maybe switch out a couple graphics to your own. And then for features, like the themes deal with the looks of WordPress, the plugins deal with the features of WordPress. So whether you have chat on there or a calendar or an events thing, those are plugins for WordPress. And the problem being is that, sure, you can download this theme and switch out the colors, but if you want to do anything past that, you're again now getting into a little bit of code, a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of talent. So, I mean, without being snarky, Jeff, to answer your question, it really depends. If I think a standard web page could work for anybody that considers themselves a standard brand.
Mm. So, in other words, I mean, every speaker wants to position themselves uniquely, wants to have a unique look, wants to gain attention, wants to draw people to their website. Mm-hmm. Because that's now, we don't send out brochures. The website, in fact, is a living brochure, a living identity of that speaker.
Well, that's what makes it so important. I mean, down to what color you pick when you go on stage. You know, I'm sure every speaker out there has 3 shirts, 4 shirts in mind that are the shirts they go to when it's keynote day. You know, so there is an understanding of this. It's just people, and I mean, it's not just about websites and design. It's about social media. It's about the internet as a whole. People constantly look at the internet as a whole as it's this brave new world with its own logic and its own way of doing things, and it really, really isn't. You know, I mean, it's the radio with cat pictures, period. So we're all internet experts, and I don't want anyone to watch this video because I won't get paid anymore, but we're all internet experts. The problem is not us having a lack of knowledge of how to do social media or how to do websites or how color theory works. The problem is we put this gap in between what we already know and the idea of it being in the internet space. Mm. You know, it's a mental block. You know, have you ever, Jeff, been at a networking event, pulled out your wallet to show a picture of the grandkids to somebody?
No, I don't do that. I hate it.
You've never shown pictures to friends at an event?
Oh, not true. I have taken my phone and showed, oh yeah, this is what we here. So yeah.
Right. So Jesus, you're an Instagram consultant.
No, I'm not.
Do you see what I'm saying? Right? If you own a cafe right now and you have the same great customer that comes in every single day and usually brings a new customer, a new friend with them, do you ever give them a free coffee?
Yeah, sure you do.
Well, then you understand dealing with brand evangelists and social media.
Oh, okay.
You see what I'm saying? It's a complete crossover. All of these things are the common sense we already know. It's just people like me get paid to create this ethereal gap in understanding that you need me to translate.
Well, don't take too much of the mystique out, or you will be unemployed. Actually, no, that's not. I mean,
I really just hate the fear people go through. I know how connecting the internet can be. and I know how the first time you get your logo, you know, uploaded and you see it on your page, or the first time you see your bottom third, there's this grr feeling of I can do it, I can go get him, I'm competing, I'm in the game now, and I hate to see anyone have to miss out on that idea, thinking that this is for kids, or this is some new world I can't understand, or any of the rest of it. You know, it's all very much based on common sense, but even with common sense does dictate you get somebody that's experienced at what they're doing. I mean, when we were making your site, one of the things we went through is not just do I like the color blue, we went through what do colors psychologically mean to people. So on each page of our site, dependent on the information we're giving them, and dependent on if it has to do with public speaking, it's going to be terrifying, and we know that. We chose colors that were very specific to the psychology of that, very specific to either getting attention or making someone feel comfortable or making someone feel like it had to do with their personal health. You know, these are the kind of things that, yeah, you can get someone that can sketch you out an incredible logo, but are they thinking past that? Are they thinking about the user experience like we were talking about? You know, the common sense of it.
Okay, we're coming up to about 45 minutes. Penny, do you have any questions in the chat box?
No, I don't. But that was a very good point, Chris. I just want to say, because I think finding someone that really knows what they're doing, such as yourself, because when you work with someone like me, that you'll say, well, what is it that you want? What I don't know, right? It's like, I need you to help me with that. And I have gone back and forth with particular persons, like, well, what do you want? Help me. So I think that's important, to get the right person that can hear what you have to say. And, oh, I just had a question pop up here. And let me just see. It says, yes, excellent point. So that was from Michelle. So, or Michael. Let me see. I need my glasses on. Michelle. Yeah, Michelle.
Oh, actually, I'm going to invite Michelle if she wants to
come and
join us.
Well, for Jeff and I's process, like when I'm working on Jeff's site, say, I'll even send Jeff songs that has nothing to do with the site. The song's not going on the site, but it's the same song that I listen to while I'm working on the site. So we're on the same kind of cultural flow for everything. It's not just about the specifics of make the picture. You know, your creative person that you hire shouldn't be an organic printer that you just send your files to and they come out. Yeah, there is a strong obligation, I think, as a designer, to work with people on what that vision was, or else why are you being hired? If I have to ask you exactly what do you want, what color should it be, da-da-da, what the hell is my point besides the fact I pay $9.99 for Photoshop?
Yes.
You know, so a lot more should be brought to it. Really, your graphic should be the final tiny result, not even the point of your relationship. You know, it should just be the obvious result of the relationship, if anything.
Okay. So I'm just learning this new program, and let's see. I'm trying to invite
Michelle?
Yeah. And it keeps trying to convert. So Michelle, if you're watching, allow it to convert. Come and join us.
She's such a tremendous supporter. Michelle is a big friend of mine, and my branded dog, Shiloh Pug. So I'm not surprised to see. Well, and anyone that knows me knows that they're never going to get me live on video. So this is very, very rare for me.
Okay, well, obviously my little piece of technology didn't work. So
see, I even bought into all the prejudices. I don't even wear a scarf, but I knew it was Creative Day. So.
Well, there should be a place maybe at the top right where Michelle can request. If she just clicks on the request, that'll bring her in.
Yes. But she's not there right now. She's not.
Don't hover too close. You'll get dragged into our hangout.
Okay. Well, I think we've kind of hit it. Well, actually, you've pounded. You know, I was reading Churchill. He says if you got to make a point, hit it once, hit it twice, and then hit it with a sledgehammer into the ground. That's kind of his thing, and I think we've really hit on it. That if you want great results as a speaker, and you want a great website, you've got to practice what you preach. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Get to know. Stay part of the conversation. Allow debate. Allow new ideas, because there'll be things that you've never thought of done in order to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, I want to take a little time to talk about next week. Next week is Danielle Turner. She's a videographer. And we're going to learn how to take videos, recordings of your live events, and how to turn that into promotional material. Essentially, I'm doing a keynote next week in Richmond, British Columbia. I'm flying in the morning, doing the keynote in the afternoon, and then while I'm there, Danielle is recording the whole process, and then I'm thanking everybody and flying back out the same day. And we'll talk about what goes into that process as it. So, any last words that you want to give everybody, Chris? Any last words of advice?
Well, sure. I just watched a speech with Simon Sinek about starting with why and that sort of a thing. And I felt that it really, his last quote in that really hit me, and it sort of affects this for me too, which is, he said, remember that Martin Luther King said, I have a dream, not I have a plan. So remember that when dealing with your creatives. If you come with the plan, there's really no point to having a creative. Come with a dream and find someone that you can trust and respect. The plan will create itself.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That is just, yes.
And you mentioned to me that he has a great video on YouTube, Simon Sinek, that's really there. Any closing remarks?
Hey, that just did it. That was wonderful, Chris. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think you're a star, buddy. So you might get asked back. I don't know if you're going to come back, because I know you've made it pretty clear that you're not that excited about doing this, but we liked it.
Hey, you're paying for it. Look at you.
Slowly but surely.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for watching ProSpeak every Friday at 12 noon. We look forward to seeing you next week. Bye for now.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Yes, it always helps you push the right button, Jeffrey.